This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we go down under to examine the wacky shark arm case that captivated Australia in 1935.
Did you say wacky?
I mean, just, it's pretty wacky.
Well,
inherently, any case that's titled the shark arm case, there's gonna be some fun to be had down the road.
Yeah, because I'm no marine biologist, but sharks don't have arms.
No, they have fins.
Yeah.
An astute observation.
Yeah.
So why is the arm in the title?
Curious. Curious.
Why don't we dive deep and figure it out? Okay. In early 1935, business at Sydney, Australia's Coogee Aquarium and Swimming Baths was floundering. The world was in the depths of the Great Depression, and aquarium owner Bert Hobson needed something to lure customers and keep his business afloat.
There's already two sea-based puns in this
What are you talking
narration.
about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Is this gonna be a running theme?
I swear it's the last one.
Okay.
His spirits were buoyed when on April 18th, Bert and his son Ron caught a 14-foot, 1-ton tiger shark off the coast and put it in their pool. There had been an increasing wave of shark attacks, and this monstrous shark was just the attraction Hobson thought needed to turn the tide on his slumping enterprise. About a week after catching the shark, and in front of crowds of families enjoying the aquarium during a holiday weekend, the behemoth suddenly began convulsing and vomiting, spitting up a rat, a bird, and finally, a human arm.
It's the Great Depression.
Yeah.
You've scrapped together what little you have to
Yeah.
take the family to the water parks for the holiday.
Let's form some great memories as a family.
And then a shark just starts vomiting rats in front of your children.
I don't think I've ever seen a shark vomit. Do you
Yeah.
imagine like a shark like slumped over like a toilet? Is a very funny image. Obviously this was just in the pool. I also want to know if it like, the velocity of the arm coming out, did it shoot out into the crowd? Did it hit somebody in the face? Or was it just like it dribbled out, like over its lips?
Or just like, you know, like when you're eating and you like kind of do a half burp, but a little bit comes up.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like a Chipotle burp.
Yeah, just a little arm came out.
Yeah. Oh, too much salsa. Hobson called the police, who fished the arm out of the pool and found a large tattoo of two boxers fighting inside the forearm. The shark was killed and its stomach was searched for additional remains, but none were found.
Boy, the last thing I would want after vomiting is to be killed.
Yeah, I mean, really just a bad week for that shark. The shark's just got it, like his last thought had to have been like,
why?
using new fingerprinting technology, the police were able to identify the arm's original operator as 45-year-old Jimmy Smith. A local paper, Truth, described Smith as, quote, a well-known suburban billiard saloon keeper, one-time promising lightweight boxer, and a man with seemingly not an enemy in the world, end quote.
Seemingly is the operative word there.
Yeah, I think so.
You don't get your arms cut off and fed to a shark if you're simpatico with all your pals.
Yeah, I can't say there's a lot of good relationships in your life if this is something that's happening to you. In the early 1930s, Smith began working as a builder for one Reginald Holmes, a well-respected member of the community on the surface, but who hid undercurrents of criminal activity. In addition to operating a successful boat building business, Holmes conducted insurance scams and organized drug deals, using his speedboats to collect drugs from ships. After the first building job, Smith plunged into more work for Holmes and became netted in his various illicit schemes. On Holmes's orders, Smith would scam builders out of their supplies, operate Holmes's speedboats, and was the caretaker of a pleasure boat called the Pathfinder. More on that later.
I love this guy.
Which guy, Holmes?
Holmes.
Why?
Wow, it's 1935. He's got a fleet of
Okay, I do think
speedboats?
a fleet of speedboats is something that a Bond villain would have, and I kind of appreciate that this guy is taking it to heart. That's kind of cool.
I'm sure by that era's standards, a speedboat is a boat that goes 11 miles an hour.
Yeah, probably not that fast, but we're not mapping, you know, relativity.
Yeah,
right now,
and
I
in
feel
my
like.
brain,
Yeah.
I'm imagining Miami Vice, but with just more burlap.
For the time, it was a bitchin' boat.
A bit devilish of you to drop the term pleasure boat and say, well, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, it hook you in there, a cliffhanger.
Because the mind reels.
Tell your mind to settle down.
It can't. Oh, there's no settling this one down now.
Christ almighty.
A pleasure boat, my word.
Smith and Holmes also worked with an old chum of Smith's, Patrick Brady. Brady began his life of crime in World War I when he realized that he was good at forging the signatures of military generals. The three men began forging checks for small amounts of money from well-off clients of Holmes. Eventually, Holmes and Smith had a disagreement over one of the check forgery scams, and it's reported that Smith began blackmailing Holmes.
Hey, I love this whole crew. I love that these men become friends over the fact that he's like, hey, you know what? You're really good at forging signatures. Well, thank you. It's something I've been practicing for a while.
I love your fleet of speedboats. These guys are scammers.
Yeah, but how do you just crack that ice? How do you break the ice there?
Oh, because it's not
You're just like out to coffee one day and you're like, hey, it's gonna sound a little wild, but you ever think about murdering a person?
How do you feel about scams?
Yeah, I mean, any sort of illicit thing.
Because there's no LinkedIn for criminals where they could read the resumes of other criminals and then hire them. So like, how do they find each other? I suppose like—
Good app idea.
They're like, yeah, LinkedIn for criminals, write that, we should write that down. We'll write that down under our schemes.
C, put a little circle around it.
Yeah. Fast forward to April 7th, 11 days before Bert Hobson caught his tiger shark. Jimmy Smith and Patrick Brady were out drinking and playing cards at the Cecil Hotel. Afterwards, the two went to a small cottage that Brady had in the beach community of Cronulla. It's widely thought that this was where Smith met his fate. A cab driver reported driving a disheveled Brady from the cottage to Holmes's house later that night. The driver would later testify, quote, "It was clear that he was frightened," end quote, and that Brady was obviously hiding something in his jacket. You know, I can't think of many other things that would be as awkward to hide under a jacket than a full-grown arm.
Well, no, what you would do is you would tuck one of your arms behind and just
and then put the arm in the sleeve itself?
Yeah.
But what if he's like, "Nice to meet you, man," and it's
like
the wrong hand, like if it's—
Yeah, how are you?
Smith's wife, who Smith had told he was going fishing, grew nervous when he didn't return after a few nights. One night, a man called her and said, quote, "Don't worry, Jimmy will be home in 3 days' time," end quote. Of course, Jimmy Smith never returned. Days later, the shark at the Koji Aquarium vomited his arm. On May 17th, Brady was arrested on forgery charges, which were merely a way to keep him in custody. Authorities interrogated him for 6 hours, but he refused to admit anything. It was only after the police questioned his wife that Brady agreed to make a statement. Brady implicated Holmes in Smith's murder, and when police questioned Holmes, he claimed to not know Brady. A few days later, Holmes took a speedboat out in Sydney Harbor, along with a bottle of alcohol and a pistol. The facts of the following trip are described in various ways, but with a grain of salt, the gist of it goes like this. Holmes got drunk on the boat and shot himself in the head with the pistol. Another man who was out boating with his children reported almost being hit by the erratically moving boat. When talking to police, the man said, quote, "You won't mistake him. He has a bullet hole in his forehead," end quote. For you see, Holmes survived the gunshot, which knocked him into the water. Now, with a gunshot wound in his head, Holmes climbed back into his boat and tried to drive back to Sydney Harbor. Police boats chased him for 4 hours until they eventually caught him. Holmes reportedly told police that he had been shot by strangers and was trying to escape. He apparently claimed he thought the police in pursuit were the people who shot him, which is why he didn't stop. It's hard to know what Holmes was really thinking because, again, he had a bullet hole in his head. This guy apparently felt well enough to go on a 4-hour boat chase.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to be doing fine. Like, I would think maybe it would really mess you up and like you'd live, but you know, you're clinging to life. But this guy is like,
yeah, this guy's looking back. The wind's whizzing through the hole in his
wiping
forehead.
Blood out of his little.
It's crazy. Holmes allegedly said to police, quote, "Jimmy Smith is dead and there is only another left. If you leave me until tonight, I will finish him," end quote. Holmes claimed that instead of Brady's story accusing him of being the organizer of the plan to kill Smith, he had actually been extorted by Brady. Brady had surfaced at Holmes's house with Smith's severed arm and attempted to blackmail him, claiming he'd pinned the murder on Holmes's instructions. Holmes said that Brady had murdered Smith, cut his body up, put the pieces in a trunk and threw the trunk into Gunnamatta Bay. In the 20s and 30s, this act was apparently so common that it had a name, the Sydney Send-Off.
Take a look, mate.
Oh, no.
Otherwise I'll be giving you a Sydney Send-Off, wouldn't I?
Sydney Send-Off.
What do you think of that, mate?
Holmes told police he paid Brady the blackmail money, who in turn left the severed arm in Holmes's living room. Holmes claimed he then panicked and threw the arm into the ocean, where it was presumably eaten by the shark that was eventually caught and placed in the aquarium. Police said they would charge Holmes with being an accessory to the murder unless he agreed to testify against Brady at the inquest into Smith's murder, set for June 12th. Holmes agreed, and on the morning of June 12, Holmes was discovered in his car with 3 bullets in his chest, this time dead. One thing to gather from this too is Brady definitely was the one who had the arm.
Okay.
However you want to talk your way around that one, that seems to be the fact.
Whether he was doing it for someone else.
Whether he was doing it on the orders of Holmes or he was doing it to then say, I'm going to blackmail Holmes.
Yeah.
Is the question, I suppose. Brady's trial still went on, but without Holmes to serve as witness, the case fell apart. Brady's lawyer argued that according to a British statute from 1276, a body was necessary to conduct an inquest, and a limb could not be considered a body. The defense also argued that sharks typically digest food within 24 hours, yet in order for the prosecution's timeline to be correct, the arm would have had to been in the shark anywhere from 8 to 17 days. The defense also claimed it was possible someone had thrown the arm into the pool where the shark was kept at Coogee Aquarium, and that it was never in the shark at all. The prosecution came back with ichthyologists, fish scientists, who said the arm could have upset the shark's digestion and impeded its function. They also brought forth 14 witnesses who said they watched the shark vomit up the arm. Did you guys see the shark vomit up the arm?
Yes.
Your Honor.
They all just did once.
After a day and a half, Brady was acquitted and released. A Sydney newspaper reported, quote, "Of course you are innocent, Mr. Brady, but please don't do it again, Mr. Brady." End quote.
Just having a life. Just having a little life.
Now, I've noticed your Australian character. Why does he tighten up like this? What's that?
It's a choice I've made.
No, do it again.
All right. Quieter and quieter.
Quieter and quieter until I can't even understand what you're saying. With that, it's time to look into some theories about what actually happened to Jimmy Smith. The first theory is that Holmes' story to police was correct, and that Brady murdered Smith and tried to extort Holmes. This is bolstered by the idea that Brady could have contracted Holmes' murder so he couldn't testify. However, at Brady's trial, defense attorneys pointed out that Brady was only 5'4", making it unlikely he could have killed Smith alone. Of course, his small stature wouldn't have prevented Brady from using a gun, but because no body was ever found, it's impossible to know how Jimmy was actually killed. Well, but what do you think about that? Because Holmes said he was going to testify against Brady, saying that Brady had done the whole thing, and then the day of the trial, he gets killed. So that obviously does not look good for Brady.
No.
So I don't think it's like good to gloss over that fact. That's a major hurdle I feel like you need to kind of confront.
It's a very gutsy. Very gutsy.
I mean, he still got off because of the arm wasn't attached to a body thing.
Yeah, no, I know that, but very gutsy to make a move like that when obviously tends to point back at you.
Which brings us to a second theory. No one killed Jimmy Smith. Because no body was found, we cannot definitively say Smith was murdered. It's possible he didn't want to bow to the pressure of Holmes' criminal activities and wanted out, but didn't think he could do so safely. So, he faked his own death. Admittedly, this theory seems unlikely, as Smith could have probably gotten away with just a severed hand instead of an entire arm.
Do you think he would be capable of cutting off his own arm?
I mean, he obviously would have had help.
Yeah, he would
probably
have
from his wife.
Yeah.
Because if he's faking his own death, it's obviously they're in cahoots.
Yeah.
They're gonna go live a life somewhere together. So he probably had her, do the little tourniquet on his right arm.
Very sweet to be in cahoots with your wife.
I mean, that's kind of part of the bargain, right?
Yeah, I guess. You don't hear that come up in vows very often.
In sickness and in health.
In sickness and cahoots.
I would say that sickness includes missing an arm or having to cut one off.
Yeah, very sweet. Okay. Sorry, honey, you're gonna have to cut my arm off.
I don't like this character anymore. A third theory, suggested by Australian legal historian Alex Castles, states that Smith was indeed killed at Brady's cottage, but that Brady was not involved. Some years after the case, Brady's wife said she had gone to the cottage thinking she would catch her husband with another woman. Instead, she overheard a group of men playing cards and drinking. Castles believes Brady was out fishing and came back to find Jimmy already murdered. According to this theory, Brady never said anything about his former friend's murder out of fear of retribution. Our final theory, the only one that I can see has a clear motivation, is that Holmes orchestrated Smith's murder. Remember how Smith was the caretaker of a yacht that Holmes owned, the Pathfinder?
The pleasure boat? I forgot about the pleasure boat.
The pleasure boat.
We're back to the pleasure boat.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah.
That's actually good that you set that up, and then I got so wrapped up in this crazy story that I forgot about this wonderful pleasure boat.
And now I'm reminded why I'm glad you forgot, because you were way too excited about a pleasure boat.
Excited to hear about the pleasure boat. Tell me about the pleasure boat.
It turns out Holmes and his associates had purchased, insured, and destroyed the boat as part of an insurance scam. Holmes, however, never received his insurance money, as Smith had reportedly become a police informant, telling authorities that the yacht's destruction was suspicious. This, coupled with Smith's reported blackmailing of Holmes over their check forging scams, could have led Holmes to arrange with Brady to have Smith killed. Once Brady murdered Smith, he brought the arm to Holmes as proof. Holmes would have disposed of the arm in the ocean, where a particularly unlucky shark happened upon it. In this theory, Holmes actually did get away with one last insurance scam. Police suspected that Holmes had contracted hitmen to kill himself after buying a generous life insurance policy. His wife and children would get the money and not have to endure the sinking embarrassment of his various crimes surfacing. Holmes's wife reportedly knew what happened to Smith and was about to share this information when she died mysteriously in a fire in 1952. It should be noted that Brady didn't die until 1965. Do you think he got nervous when he read in the paper that a shark had vomited out an arm?
Yeah, like his wife came to him, look at this hilarious headline.
And he's like,
a shark is vomiting.
I gotta make some calls.
Ah, that's real funny.
Sweat just dripping down his face. When Bert Hobson and his son fished a tiger shark out of the ocean, they were trying to lure attention to their floundering aquarium. What they actually hooked was a mystery that would draw the attention of the entire country and end a local criminal's life. As for how Jimmy Smith's tattooed arm finally found its way into the shark, that remains unsolved. One thing to mine from all of this, or to fish from all of this, is that if it wasn't for that pesky little shark, Holmes would have got away with all of this.
Friends murder each other all the time. You know, it happens. That's the way of the world. It happens. You just gotta, you know.
I gotta make some calls.
Just gotta watch what you say.
Okay.
Take a hike. You won't be seeing much of him anytime soon.
You still doing it?
Yeah.